I was so concerned about being liked that I put everything else on the back burner. And so when I was able to then start to see my people as people with needs, objectives, challenges, hopes, dreams, things that they were trying to accomplish, my communication actually became more clear and more direct with them. So I was far less concerned about, okay, Joe, if we've got a performance issue with you, previously I'm tap dancing around the issue because I want to make sure that you feel good leaving this and you don't think that I'm a bad leader and you still like me at the end of the conversation. Whereas that's not really what you need, right? Because you want to grow and develop in your career, just like I should want you to grow and develop in your career, just like I want to grow and develop in my own career. So if I really care about your career as much as mine, then you're going to need this feedback in order to do better. And so instead, these conversations that I'd previously had that were an hour long, that were dancing around 85 different topics to make sure that everybody got the warm and fuzzy at the end, turned into 20-minute conversations. Joe, you got a lot to offer, and I'm really glad that you're here. Unfortunately, it's being undercut by the way you're operating at work. We can't focus on what you're doing because you're yelling at everybody. So what I expect of you, if you want to be the leader that you tell me you want to be, is that this behavior stops. And instead, this is how we're going to move forward. And we're off to the races, right? But it's amazing what is possible when you are willing to put down that self-image that you're so concerned about protecting.
And that self-image, it becomes such a energy and time suck in itself. Because again, what you're talking about is, instead of wanting to be a certain way, is you're wanting to be seen a certain way. I wanted to be seen as competent. And so I was putting all my energy and effort into doing those things that would make me appear competent and confident, instead of doing the actual things that would have actually made me competent and confident. Today's episode sponsor is Aditon, creators of Aditon Operations Kit, the military's go-to software for personnel and equipment accountability. AOK goes where you do, any network, anytime, any place. I got to know Aditon's co-founders, James and JJ, several years ago. They are former Army NCOs who have years of experience in the tech industry. They understand that most military jobs aren't performed behind a computer desk. Personnel and operations are distributed, but accountability of property is paramount to making mission. That's where Logi, AOK's equipment management software, comes into play. Formerly known as 92X, Logi is a next generation of equipment management for the military. Logi offers unrivaled features for military teams on the go. Ingest and digitize your primary and sub-hand receipts. Generate and share sub-hand receipts and DA forms with your team in just a few clicks. Capture photos, tags, and notes across your team to build context on the state of equipment. Get easy on-the-go access to critical property records. Logi is custom built for the modern military professional. It gives you your valuable time back so you can get back to the mission at hand at home or in the field. Whether you're doing monthly inventories or preparing for deployment, Logi is your pocket property book, giving you real-time visibility into equipment status and mission readiness. Logi is currently in use across the U.S. Army Special Forces, and it's expanding. For a limited time, listeners of the From the Green Notebook podcast can try out Logi for free. Visit aditonppbc.com/FTGN-Logi to get started. That's ADYTONPBC.com/FTGN-LOGE. How do I know what I think until I see what I say?
The Green Notebook, carried by military leaders around the world. Within those pages are sweat, tears, triumphs, and the hard-won lessons of life. Lessons worth sharing. Each week, the team dives into the notebooks of military leaders, business professionals, authors, athletes and coaches, and entertainers to share lessons and help you lead with the best version of yourself.
Welcome to another episode of From the Green Notebook. I'm your host, Joe Byerly, and today we're diving into the Green Notebook of Victoria Trammel, a senior consultant with the Arbinger Institute and one of the key voices behind the newest edition of Leadership and Self-Deception. Now, out of all the books I've read on leadership, this one actually hit me differently the second time around. So the first time I read it was years ago I think I was like in my early 30s, and I barely highlighted a thing and I didn't really understand it. But coming back to it now with more experience and a deeper sense of self awareness, it felt like every page was holding up a mirror to the challenges I faced in my career. And that's because leadership and self deception challenges one of the most common blind spots we face as leaders, the way we justify our own behavior while blaming others for theirs. It shows how we can deceive ourselves, not out of malice, but out of a deep need to be seen a certain way, and how that deception quietly erodes trust, collaboration, and effectiveness. In this interview, Victoria and I talk about what self deception is, what it looks like in leadership, in organizations, and even in our personal lives. She breaks down the concept of collusion, the role of inward versus outward mindsets, and how our need for justification can sabotage even our best of intentions. If you've ever left a meeting feeling understood, been frustrated with a teammate, or found yourself locked in a cycle of blame, this conversation will feel very familiar. But more importantly, it's going to offer you a way forward. So grab your green notebooks and please welcome to the show, Victoria Trammel.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe.
Well, Victoria, it's interesting. I read this book in I think 3 days, maybe. But I have the second edition right here.
Oh, okay.
And I don't remember it having an impact on me. I opened it up to try to okay, what did I highlight? I didn't highlight anything.
Really? Okay.
And what I realized was I read this when I was 33.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have the emotional maturity at the time to realize I was self-deceived and I was the problem. Kind of like the Taylor Swift song. And so we did a Taylor Swift reference, first 5 seconds of the podcast.
Winning.
But I just didn't realize how, again, reading it this time, I devoured this book because now I'm in a place where I'm yes, the entire time I'm reading it. And I was that person. So again, really excited for today's interview.
Well, no, I'd say I don't think you're alone, because I know when I read the book the first time, I was like, wow, this is going to be really helpful for all of these people that I know because they need this, right? Because it was never about me.
Oh.
And it was probably the second or third time that I read it, much like you were talking about, that I was like, oh, wait, just kidding. It's me.
Yeah. So, hello, I am the problem.
Yes.
So when we talk the book Leadership and Self-Deception, what do we mean when we say or what do you mean at the Arbinger Institute when you say self-deception?
Yeah. So really kind of at its foundation, it's talking about this intentional ignoring of part of the truth, right? Because when you talk about deception, usually it is in the form of constructing a false reality in order to manipulate another, right? Like when you think about kind of quote conventional deception, but when you talk about deceiving yourself and what that looks like, it's ignoring that there is some other information out there that may refute what you have decided is the truth. And worse than that, you've constructed this false reality that is 100% designed just to serve your justifying self-image, right? And so when I say that, I see myself as the type of leader who cares about her people, right? So good thing. However, I can deceive myself into thinking that everything that I'm doing is for my people, but in reality, it's because I want to make sure I look like I'm the type of leader who cares about her people. Because that's really what I'm caring about most. I mean, and it's this need, this justification that we crave as humans, that's really the driver behind self-deception. And it can lead to what we call an inward mindset, which means that all of our behaviors, everything becomes self-focused. And we lose track of the people that we impact when we do our jobs. And it's not even just in the workplace. I would say when I read this book, I don't know, probably second or third time, my first thought was, well, what does this look like for my family? And how does this, work with my spouse and my children and my parents? And, it's an interesting concept, one that I definitely wrestled with when I was first introduced to Arbinger 10 plus years ago. But it's one that I highly recommend people getting curious about.
Yeah, it's such an important thing, I'm doing this episode not for me, but for all the listeners that have problems because I don't have any.
No, of course not. None of us do.
But I saw this play out in my organization a couple of years ago. So I got introduced to this test called Insights Discovery. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's
I'm not.
basically the same question asked 25 times. And you go through this assessment. And from that, you get a readout it's eerily spot on of like who you are and how you show up
Interesting.
in relationships. So this group PZI Consulting had done it for me prior to taking command of the organization. So I brought them in to do this test. And I'll share a story, and hopefully these people don't listen to the show. But when I came in, there was two groups in my organization that were constantly going back and forth. One group saw the other's actions as like directly reflecting like we don't like these people, so we're not going to share this information with them. The other people saw it was, well, they're disengaged, so they really don't care, and I've got to make a decision, whatever. Well, that was the perception on both sides. So we did this test and we shared our results. And when we got our results back and they could say that, hey, this other group was very slow to process information, did stuff very analytically, internally, didn't maybe talk out loud and get a group consensus. And then part of that too was this other group that when they didn't feel involved, they shut down. Like these were like the summaries that were coming out in these assessments. And all of a sudden it was like in that moment, a light bulb went on between the two groups to where they could see it for what it was. Like it wasn't because, they weren't being rude to me. It's just how they operate. But everything that they were doing, I was looking at it from a perception of, they're doing this because of me, not because.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that issue you're describing, like, I can't tell you the number of times I've been on one of those sides that you just described, right? So we call it a collusion. And the reason we call it that is it's almost like these two parties are in an agreement to mistreat each other. And it's like the shame blame game, right? So if it's like, Joe, okay, I'm going to mistreat you so long as you agree to blame your bad behavior on me so that I can continue to mistreat you and blame my bad behavior on you. And we'll just keep going back and forth until none of us gets what we need to get done. Okay, cool. Like,
that works.
I mean, it's just, it's one of those things. It's so amazing. But, to your point, you read all of these actions through a filter. And that's what we talk about. I mean, we're talking about self-deception. I'm deceiving myself into thinking that this is how that person actually is, or this is how that group actually is, when in reality, there's more data that I'm ignoring. And when you talk about it in the context of leadership, I mean, don't you want all the information in order to make the best decision? And that's where that addiction to justification that we have as humans is so problematic, because we will give up everything in the organization. Because I would guess if you had asked anybody in either of those groups what they cared about most, it would be, getting the job done, meeting mission objectives, whatever that looks like, right? But in reality, it's justifying the way that they're seeing that other group.
Yeah. And it's like, and, again, reading this book this time around, I have seen it play out, not just in like work relationships, but even like personal relationships. Like, maybe a friend doesn't return my phone call for like a week. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, this person doesn't like me anymore. I did or said something that, like upset them, when in reality, they've got a lot going on in their own lives. But that initial reaction is that inward mindset of whatever they're doing is pointed at me. And then again, then justifies everything I do after that.
Absolutely. Right. It's so amazing, because I remember when I read through it, I remember thinking, this is such common sense. Like, why wouldn't I want to do this all the time? And then I'm looking at all of the relationships in my life and going, yeah, but I rarely do it any of the time. Like, why? I mean, it's just, it was so baffling to me.
There's a line that I wrote down that says, blame and defensive lists never seem to get me where I'd like to go. And yeah, to your point, like, exactly, like that's very common sense. Like, I don't think in any time, if I've tried to accomplish anything by blaming somebody else or being defensive of my own actions, did I actually ever accomplish that thing? If anything, I just created a ton of drama around whatever we were doing. And that served as like an energy suck within itself, but it's so
1,000%.
hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you're so right. Cause like, I think of the emotional energy that I would spend perpetuating these collusions, right? Continuing to see myself in some kind of way that wasn't reality. It was so much energy. And when I finally got to the point where I could put down that, that need to be justified and just kind of see the truth for what it is, like see this person as they really are, warts and all, it was like a burden was off my shoulders. I was sharing a collusion yesterday. I was facilitating one of our courses and I was sharing a collusion with the group. And part of it is talking about the things that I used to do in response to how this other person treated me. And so I had a government manager who was, asking me to move my data from Excel into a dashboard. He was asking me for weekly emails. He wanted to have monthly program management reviews that had all the stakeholders involved. So in my immense helpfulness, because I saw him as micromanaging and controlling and, just overextending and overreaching and not trusting me, I gave him the bare minimum information he needed in that dashboard. I would send my weekly emails to him after I knew he had left for the day on Friday. And I would make sure that when I was scheduling those meetings, it was last minute so that the fewest number of stakeholders could attend.
That's very productive of you, Victoria.
Very highly productive, right? But if you had asked me in that moment, I would have said, I'm a wonderful program manager and I care about my people. Well, how is having, basically all of our government stakeholders upset with me, thinking that I'm some kind of obstacle to what they're trying to achieve? How does that help the people reporting to me on my program? It doesn't. But it does feed my justification because he is all of these things, right? Controlling, micromanaging, and he doesn't trust me. I'm justified in what I'm doing.
Right. And that's a form of self-betrayal, right? That you talk about.
Absolutely. And the word self-betrayal. Oh my gosh. So Joe, you're going to get me going on a tangent.
Just let it go. It's okay.
Yeah. Now you got frozen in my head. Let it go. No, so self-betrayal, that's really kind of the moment that we become in this inward mindset. And it's because, just as humans, we have a sense when we respond to others, right? It's just kind of like human to human. There is something that may occur to me that might be helpful for this other person. And I have the ability to either honor that sense or betray it. And when I betray it, that's what then starts this cycle of needing justification, right? So, for example, my poor husband, he had been studying for an exam. He was in the process of getting his bachelor's and he was studying for a certified financial planner exam. There was a lot going on. And so I had said, you know what? I'll take the kids to Chick-fil-A and let them just tear it up, burn off some energy. You get the house to yourself. You can study in peace and quiet, focus. We'll come back in a few hours, right? I'm a good wife. Pat myself on the back. Off we go. I come back. We open the door. And he's asleep on the couch. Now, I had an initial sense, this man has been working so hard. Let him sleep. But of course I didn't, right? And in that moment, when I betrayed that sense to let him sleep, all of a sudden he became a lazy, ungrateful husband who never cares about his children and has left me to be beat up by these, ruckus kids for the better part of 3-4 hours, and he doesn't appreciate anything I do for him, right? Because I, on the other hand, am super mom who works a full-time job, and I have graciously stepped in to take these children on for all of this time for him, and he still refuses to acknowledge how good of a wife I am. And the thing that's so tricky about self-betrayal, first, that whole thing happened in an instant. And worse, my husband was asleep. Like he had no idea any of this transpired. And so when I left, he was the greatest husband on the planet. And when I came home, all of a sudden he was the worst. The reality of the situation is he is nowhere near as bad as I made him out to be in my brain, right? That self-betrayal was so spectacular. Like, believe me, I married up. I outkicked my coverage with this man. And so but it all happened in an instant. And that's the thing that's so crazy is the people to whom we betray ourselves can be completely unaware that anything has transpired. And yet we just start to treat them differently.
Can I share my asshole story?
Come on, Joe, let's do it.
So again, this is like my son's 14 now. This was when he was a baby. And like there's a similar story is in the book. But like I remember it was like 2 a.m. I'm working like 70-hour, 80-hour weeks. I'm a company commander, so I'm very important. And like he's waking up in the middle of the night, like crying. And it woke me up before it actually woke my wife up. And instead of like getting up and doing anything about it, all of a sudden my self-betrayal kicked in. I'm an important company commander in the United States Army, defending America against enemies, foreign and domestic. My wife right now is asleep, and she's asleep, or maybe she's purposefully ignoring the fact that she's crying or he's crying and like wants to get some extra sleep in. And so like my self-betrayal was like elbowing her and being like, hey, wake up, like baby's crying. I need you to like go do that. Now, at the time, totally justified. Now I look back on that in absolute horror. Like what an asshole I was in that moment. And yeah, I'm sorry. Like if you're listening to this episode, babe, I'm sorry.
14 years later, it's good. It's good. No, I mean, but it's amazing because if you think about it, like that was one example for you and one example for me. And if I'm being real, I mean, it happens every day, right? I will betray myself and start to think about myself in certain ways that are maybe partially true, but certainly not the reality of the situation, right? I am never as good or as bad as I make myself out to be when I am betraying myself. It's just not. Everything is exaggerated. It's like inflated. It's like you got the like funhouse mirror that you're looking through to see what the reality of the situation is. And when you put that then in the context of a workplace setting, right, whether it be, military or corporate or, something else entirely, it has catastrophic effects because you figure like, so I spent, almost 2 decades supporting the intelligence community. The thing that we needed most was clear information to ensure successful operations, right? Like that's all you could ever want. But when we start to get so focused on making sure that I look better than the person that I'm working with, or that person I'm working with is a jerk, so I'm not going to help them anyway, all of a sudden, all of that nonsense, all that drama undercuts everything that we're trying to achieve for mission objectives. And you talk about security in the nation, like it's a pretty big objective, pretty important. Like this is not just, lunch money that we're talking about. This is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And so like you said, this happens in just a second, a split second. And actually I want to like kind of, get into the part where we talk about like, how do we slow down a little bit and evaluate those evil thoughts you're having? Like,
yes, there is hope. There is hope.
I can't believe you thought that way about your husband.
Don't tell him if he's listening. I'm sorry, babe. I love you.
This became a marriage therapy show. Okay, so one of the stories that is in the book, that's actually one of my favorite, is the story of Dr. Semmelweis. Because again, intentions were pure, they were great, but the outcome was affected by people having an inward mindset. So would you be able to just briefly share that story before we get into
so it was 1800s Vienna, I believe. So Dr. Semmelweis had taken note of the fact that his maternity ward had catastrophically higher rates of mortality among women than any other hospital in the area. And they could not figure it out. And so, they started to kind of pull all the different levers that they were thinking about and trying to see what was going on in there. And he ultimately had a sabbatical where he ended up leaving the hospital to go do a rotation elsewhere. And while he was gone, the mortality rates in his maternity ward dropped, like plummeted. And so then when he came back and heard this report, it was the first moment that he was like, wait, hold on. Maybe I'm the issue here. And what is it about what I do that's different from everybody else here? Well, come to find out, he was doing cadaver research and then not washing his hands before seeing his live patients. And so those pathogens that were in the cadaver were then being transferred to his patients and ultimately killing these women. And, he talks about the weight of that realization, thinking of the thousands of women who died at his hand by something that could have been fixed by taking a moment and examining what I'm doing that's making things harder for others. And that's really, like, in a nutshell, what we can do. I mean, I would say the easiest thing to start is getting curious, right? Like, in that moment, like you talked about it, right? You got the email and you were like, or the text message, and they didn't respond, and taking a moment to be like, well, hold on, maybe they're going through something this week, or maybe they forgot. I mean, goodness me, the number of times that I have forgotten to respond to a text message and it's been like a week. I'm like, oh, so sorry. I read this and I responded in my brain, right? I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, there's no malice there. And so, getting curious about what the other person might be going through, what might be happening on their end, what might be contributing to this situation, what might be affecting their ability to do whatever that is, right? Maybe the phone got stolen. Maybe the phone got lost. Maybe, the phone got launched out the car window and was broken into a million pieces, right? Maybe they're backpacking in the mountains. Who knows, right? There's a million explanations that could be, but more often than not, we latch onto the ones that feed the way that we want to see that person. So, I would say getting curious first and foremost. And then second, along the lines of that curiosity is, how have I been making things harder for this person? Or how have I not been fully helpful, right? I am the queen of being just helpful enough to then wear the label of being, quote, helpful. But there are certainly ways that I could be more helpful if I'm being honest with myself. So I would say, like, those are the two that I would recommend as we try and kind of move ourselves from this inward to an outward mindset.
I'd like to introduce you to our newest partner, Roger Bank, a modern digital military bank built by military members for military members. Whether you're stationed stateside or overseas, Roger is designed to meet the unique needs of our men and women in uniform. I recently opened an account myself, and the process was incredibly smooth. It took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Now, here's why I'm excited to partner with Roger. They offer high-yield checking and savings accounts, 0 account fees, early payday, and automatic savings with Roundup Match. Their military-ready direct deposit form is even auto-populated and signed by the CEO, saving you time and hassle. Plus, you get free global ATM access, real person customer support, and they even offer accounts for service members as young as 17. Funds are FDIC insured through Citizens Bank of Edmond, so you can bank with confidence and peace of mind. Visit roger.bank to learn more. That's ROGER.bank. One of the toughest parts of leadership is building a culture where people communicate clearly, hold each other accountable, and actually thrive together without needing constant oversight. That's where Cairn Leadership comes in. They help fast-growing companies develop the leadership skills needed to scale, not with boring slide decks or corporate buzzwords, but with the powerful mix of executive coaching, tailored curriculum, and custom outdoor activities. I first met Knight Campbell, Cairn's founder, when he joined me back on episode 24 of the podcast. Since then, I've been really impressed by how he and his team make leadership development intentional, experiential, and deeply effective. Think canoeing the Shenandoah or climbing in Joshua Tree, real experiences that unlock trust, communication, and clarity among your team. If you want to build a stronger culture and leadership capacity that lasts, check them out at cairnleadership.com/FTGN, and you'll get 10% off a full team program when you connect through that link. Some notes that I had, like, when I was kind of thinking through this is, like, when we have problems that arise, whether they're relational problems or, in work, it is a relational problem because humans
Absolutely.
Is like, do you value the relationship and the mission, or do you value being right? Was like something that I wrote down. And when I ask myself that, it actually makes me pause for 2 seconds and kind of step back. The other one is like knowing what you know about this, the other person, the other party involved. Can you approach issues in a way that honors yourself, and then it allows both of you or the team to address the problem, together? And so like going back to the Semmelweis thing, like, he's like, he was actually like an asshole about it. Like, you got to wash your hands and everything. And
Right.
everybody's defenses, like, in
Mm-hmm.
the medical community, because basically he was saying, all of you are dumb, all of you are
Right.
wrong.
All y'all
And
are the problem, right?
yeah, yeah. And so like even for him is, like to get this problem across the line, how can he do it so in a way that it honors like who he is and this issue, and also recognizes this medical community, these people for who they are, and then go from there instead of whatever approach we take. And a lot of times for us in the military, it's a bulldozer approach uh, to relationships full of self-betrayal and justification, which ends up damaging it. And then like we were talking about earlier, like making a lot of drama that
Mm,
doesn't help solve the problem or move the ball any further at all.
absolutely. I mean, I think, a common misconception about what it means to be outward is that being outward is being nice. And I would say that so in my last position before I joined Arbinger, I had a program, it was about 80 people. And at the time that I took over, I was so concerned with being seen as a good leader, a leader that cared about her people, a leader that cared about their growth and development, that was the thing that I was far more concerned about protecting and reinforcing than actually being the leader that cared for her people. And so when I went through almost a year's worth of coaching with an Arbinger coach, that it was a little bit more painful than I had originally expected it to be, right? Because there was some harsh kind of inward, introspection that I had to do to kind of understand what was going on. But I was so concerned about being liked that I put everything else on the back burner. And so when I was able to then start to see my people as people with needs, objectives, challenges, hopes, dreams, things that they were trying to accomplish, my communication actually became more clear and more direct with them. So I was far less concerned about, okay, Joe, if we've got a performance issue with you, previously I'm tap dancing around the issue because I want to make sure that you feel good leaving this and you don't think that I'm a bad leader and you still like me at the end of the conversation. Whereas that's not really what you need, right? Because you want to grow and develop in your career, just like I should want you to grow and develop in your career, just like I want to grow and develop in my own career. So if I really care about your career as much as mine, then you're going to need this feedback in order to do better. And so instead, these conversations that I'd previously had that were an hour long, that were dancing around 85 different topics to make sure that everybody got the warm and fuzzy at the end, turned into 20-minute conversations. Joe, you got a lot to offer, and I'm really glad that you're here. Unfortunately, it's being undercut by the way you're operating at work. We can't focus on what you're doing because you're yelling at everybody. So, what I expect of you, if you want to be the leader that you tell me you want to be, is that this behavior stops. And instead, this is how we're going to move forward. And we're off to the races, right? But it's amazing what is possible when you are willing to put down that self image that you're so concerned about protecting.
And that self-image, it becomes such a energy and time suck in itself, because again, what you're talking about is wanting, instead of wanting to be a certain way, is you're wanting to be seen a certain way, and that takes a lot of work. It's a lot easier to sit in a meeting and look around the table and say, I don't know what this is, could you explain it to me,
Mm,
instead of putting up a front. I had a senior leader tell me one time that somebody was coming in to brief him on something and he had no idea what the person was talking about. Like he kept using this one acronym, and so
mm.
like under the table he's googling
Oh,
these
jeez.
these words,
I've
and
been
like,
there.
yeah, because he was so important. And I found it too, again, going back younger in my career, I wanted to be seen as competent, and so I was putting all my energy and effort into doing those things that would make me appear competent and confident,
Hmm.
instead of doing the actual things that would have actually made me competent and confident. And I wasted so many years in the military. And it was something I would always talk to more junior folks about. Like, if you suck at something, like just work on getting better about it. Don't
Yeah.
worry about trying to put on this false facade that you're the perfect leader, because nobody's perfect.
Well, and I think about it too, because I was the exact same way, right? Early on in my career, not only was I one of few women, I was by far and away the youngest, right? So I had both things that I am highly insecure about, making sure that I make up for in every possible way, being seen as that way, right? But I think now, later in my career, looking back on it as a leader, I'm like, man, how much harder must I have made it for my boss pretending like I knew what I knew rather than actually knowing how to do it, right? Like how many unintended consequences and how many, mistakes did I make that created more work for everybody else, all because I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't willing to ask for help. Like, hi, I'm sorry, Corey.
So
I was just thinking
welcome,
about that. I'm like, man.
welcome back to the forgiveness episode. Um,
Self-forgiveness, asking
yeah,
for forgiveness, all of the forgiveness.
and like as you're talking about that, like there was when I was a junior officer, like I didn't understand property accountability. And so I tried to fake the funk with it. And we probably spent a year and a half looking for things that I just didn't do right off the get-go. So I'm sorry, guys. Um, but but yeah, like but I think that's like so hard, it's so hard to do because like again, this idea of being seen a certain way, if we're not careful, will trump everything else. And so this book again is like just a really important tool, I think, to bring that stuff into consciousness and make us kind of reflect on those things and just
Yeah.
slow down. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay to like not know the answer to everything, and it starts breaking down those barriers that start forming, because everything that you're doing is with this like inward me mindset.
Well, and the thing that I love about the new version of leadership and self-deception is that we look at this idea of inwardness from two different perspectives, right? Previously in past versions, it was strictly from, what we would call a better than, right? That, the main character, the protagonist, saw himself as better than the people that he worked with, which shows up in a certain way, right? I would argue that there was a good chunk of my career where that's where I showed up at work. If you all bothered to be half as smart as I was, then you would already understand this and we would be able to move along. But no, let me slow down and explain it to you in second grade words in crayon. Ready, set, right? Which certainly invites the most collaboration and innovation in your teams. Not quite. But the new perspective that we've now introduced in the fourth edition is also now from the worse than, right? Which I would say that, now that we're able to capture kind of both sides of the coin, I feel like just about everyone should be able to see themselves in this book in one way or another. Because I think that's where initially I struggled reading the book because I didn't necessarily think of myself as better. I was super young. I had no idea what I was doing. Right. And so it was hard for me to align and go, yeah, that's me. Right. But now with the introduction of Anna, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm Anna in this book. Like, that's me, where I'm going, I'm just going to sit here and keep my mouth shut because you guys obviously know what you're doing. And I'm just going to, nope, thanks. Which means that all of my expertise and all of my knowledge and all of my experience is getting lost because I am pulling myself out of the conversation. Or, as we were talking about, I'm going through all of the song and dance and jazz hands and glitter sparkles to make sure that nobody notices that I don't actually know what I'm doing, which is a heck of a lot of effort.
Yeah, I remember for me, I was like in the conventional army for the longest time. And then in 2017, I went and served in a special forces organization. And all of a sudden, my mindset set shifted from, again, because it's young and immature, of a better than to worse than. Like
Mm,
these men and women know way more than me. They have way more experience than me. And what I wasn't taking into account, that like I was there for a reason. Like my expertise, my background, my experiences would contribute, to the whole apple pie. And I was like holding back from speaking up, from getting involved. And there was this constant like mental jujitsu I had to go through almost every single time before I spoke up or, participated in something, because I was coming at it from a worse than mindset.
mm. I mean, it's amazing because I think when I took over a program, it was a medical services program. And so I had medical professionals on there. Now, I'd been a consumer of medical services, but I could not have told you the difference between a licensed practical nurse, a registered nurse, and a nurse practitioner. Well, there is a hierarchy there. And not understanding that, I put my foot in my mouth so many times. And I mean, it was one of those I didn't want to admit that I didn't know these things because everybody said it was, quote, basic understanding. I
Yeah.
knew my program management stuff inside and out, but the subject matter that I was supposed to be leading, I didn't know. And I certainly didn't get curious. And instead, I just kind of pretended and fumbled through it, at which point people started to realize that I really didn't know. And the fact that I wasn't willing to recognize that I didn't know, they lost confidence in me as a leader.
Yeah. And we're like having this conversation right now. We're talking about these like crazy conversations we're having with ourselves in our heads, during all these moments. And everybody, I think like that's one thing I realized as I got older. Everybody else is having the same damn conversation in their head. So while like I think that, the 30 eyes on the room are looking at me and they're, judging me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're having the same exact conversation. And so I just need to get out of my own way and contribute. And I think, another byproduct of the worse than mindset of, this person, I'm worse than this person is defensive. Like you get defensive
Mm.
anytime somebody tries to correct you. At least that's been my
Mm-hmm.
experience with it. Is it same for you?
I mean, yeah, I think it depends, right? Because I think when I am in the worse than box, a lot of times if I get criticized, I will shut down. I will shut down and I will remove myself from the situation. But just as easily, I could be in the better than box in that moment, which I would get really high and mighty. And I think the thing that is so fascinating by this work is that we will go into whatever style of inwardness gives us the most justification in that moment, right? So it could be like we talk about four different inward mindset styles. We talk about, the better than and the worse than. And then the close cousin of the better than is the I deserve. And then the close cousin of the worse than is the need to be seen as. I have made my tour around all four styles in one conversation because it's one of those things I can do it. I am a ninja black belt in inwardness when it comes to this. And it's because I have spent so much time in my life seeking justification. And that's really the most disappointing thing when I think about it is how much time and effort have I spent justifying what I'm doing rather than just doing it? Like, rather than doing the thing that really gets my objective, down the field. Like, it's just, I think about that. And as organizations, we see it all the time. People coming in and that person's the problem and that person's in my way and that person won't do what I'm telling them to do or that person's, completely useless. And especially like in this day and age where we are seeing retention issues across the board, engagement issues across the board, lack of resources across the board, stress is at an all-time high. And what we're doing is merely manufacturing additional stress. We're 100% in control of that, which is, the benefit and I guess the
Yeah.
the disappointing part, right? We're in control, which is really exciting, but we're in control, which means we've done this to ourselves.
Exactly. And I think, one of the things that I wrote down too, that was in the book was that, our emotions are not a reliable guide to the truth.
Ooh,
And
yes.
we often feel that way. So I think an important aspect of this too, and I'm curious as to, what you've seen at the Institute is, just taking a step back and, pausing for just a minute and being like, hey, what am I feeling right now in this moment where I feel my stress anxiety level go up? And then trying to figure out from there, is it because I think I'm better than this person? Is it because like I'm in charge, so I deserve this? Is this,
Mm-hmm.
like I just want to be seen as a good leader and that's why I'm feeling this way?
Yeah.
I think it's a good, I imagine, at least in my experience, it's a good tool to use to try to figure out what's really going on under the surface.
Well, you hit the nail on the head because we actually have a tool called Focus on Facts, where you're articulating everything that's going on or everything that's happening with this person. And then you're having to pull out what is your interpretation or your perception of this person versus what is the reality of what they're doing, right? So, I mean, one that we see all the time and one that I've experienced myself is, well, he's micromanaging me. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? Well, he's texting me every day or asking for a status every day. I have to provide a weekly status report, and I've got to ensure that he's on every communication board before I send it. I said, okay, well, those are the facts, right? That you've got to check in daily. You have a weekly report, and you've got to ensure that your communication is cleared before you send it. Your perception is that he's a micromanager. And let's get into the reality of what that means then, right? So just kind of teasing that apart and taking that moment, to your point, it's incredible what we can do. Because I think somewhere in the back of our brains, we know it's not actually reality, but it's sometimes so scary to put down that justification and see it for what it is. Because then we've got to admit that, one, maybe we're wrong. And two, maybe this person isn't the demon that we've made them out to be.
Right. Yeah. And when you look at things through that lens of perception, which we do when we look at somebody through a lens, sometimes it's, I found it's good too, to what evidence doesn't support what I'm feeling right now. This person's not calling me back, whatever. Okay, well, this person's on vacation. X,
Right.
Y, and Z, and then it steps it back. Something else too. I'm curious for you. For me, one of the things from the Green Notebook, because we were talking before the show, it's a green notebook that you write things down in. I have found that just slowing down and writing things out, again, going back to you're talking about facts, is in the immediate moment, and this is really hard to do, but I will talk about you because I'm perfect, but your moment with your husband, that happened in a split second, right? And so at that point, your thoughts and emotions are in the driver's seat, not you. But if you were to step back from that and just kind of write down, okay, he's been cramming like crazy, till midnight for the last
Right.
4 days, this, okay, now I think you can kind of see things a little bit more clearly, that you can't when all these thoughts are all jumbled up inside your head.
I feel like there's something that's unlocked when you put pen to paper. And I found it pen to paper even more so than typing, right? Because I can type a heck of a lot faster than I can write. But there's something that happens and that unlocks when you put pen to paper. And yeah, I think just taking that moment to go, okay, what's happening here, right? What is this person trying to achieve? What is this person running up against? What are the things going on that may be affecting them positively or negatively, right? And just kind of getting curious about that. I feel like so often that could be enough for us to be like, well, okay, hold on. So obviously the way I saw this was not actually reality. Let's rewind and try again.
Yeah, because then if you, it's if we don't do that, we end up, like you said, just continuing to perpetuate this collusion cycle where, this person's the enemy, this person's lazy, this person's messed up, this person doesn't like me, this person thinks they're better than whatever those things are, those false perceptions are. And then it drives everything we do after that. Again, talking about you, getting getting things in the last minute, getting your reports in just with just enough information to satisfy the requirement. And so all of a sudden your actions are not you being the best version of Victoria.
No.
It's this weird person that's being encumbered by all these fake perceptions. So I think that's again, it's such an important point because again, it's just two of us having this conversation, but in an organization made up of 500 people, this is going on multiple times a day, in so many different angles. And
well, and you brought up two different groups, right? You can have whole factions of organizations in collusion with one another. And the thing is, I mean, we've seen them last for decades with some of our clients. And they will exist long before people arrive, and they will step right into them, and they will continue to exist long after they depart. Because I mean, how many times have we started a job and it's been like, hey, just so you know, that guy over there, just know he's never paying attention to what you're talking about. So just don't bother including him on the email.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden we're right in it. Okay, that's how we treat that person. We have not had a single opportunity to come to our own conclusion about that individual, but we've been conditioned as to this is how things go. And so that's where, I mean, I think it can be most treacherous is a lot of times bad advice is, or bad information is, basically conveyed as policy. Well, it's just bad information. Like, where does it come from? We got to question it. Now, sometimes it really is policy, at which point
Right.
follow it, please. I'm not saying break policy. But a lot of times we just get this bad information from people that has been persisting. Like I had one participant yesterday in my course go, it's like Hatfields and McCoys. I'm like, there you go.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
and we've like in the Army, like this is like probably like one of the oldest Hatfield McCoys. they go back. Like you have the staff and you have the men and women on the line. And the staff is constantly ruining the days of the men and women on the line, and they don't care about them. They just want to leave work early, have their long coffee breaks and their 2-hour lunches, and their sole mission in life is to make the people on the line miserable. And then the people on the line, they don't do what you tell them to do. They take twice as long. They're really incompetent. And so you need to micromanage, like all these things, and it ends up becoming this like self-fulfilling prophecy of these issues. And it creates stress, it creates drama. And so that's like one of my jobs as a leader in my previous organization was like constantly being like the the chief reminding officer of the organization, like these people are not trying to make your day worse, and these people aren't intentionally ignoring you, is to try to look at it from the other side. And so I think the concepts in this book are useful for leaders across, I'm speak for the military, leaders across military organizations, because this is like, again, there was probably in the Civil War, like, people in the Union staff, like complaining that the Union soldiers weren't taking the hill fast enough,
guaranteed.
So
Guaranteed.
this is so important. Well, I was trying to think, like, every now and then this happens, Victoria, where I have like this outline that I like plan to follow. It's nice and neat. And then you ruined it.
I nuked it. It's all right.
And so
everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you meet Victoria on a podcast. And so I'm just trying to think now, like so what are the next steps? Like if people are listening to this podcast and they're like, yeah, like I do that all the time. It's always everybody else. It's never me. I'm never the problem.
So first, I would highly recommend the book, right? I think that's a great place to start. And early in 2025, we're actually going to have a book club on leadership and self-deception, which I think we just wrapped one for The Outward Mindset, which is another book that Arbinger has created. And it was so good because you get people from all walks of life sharing their experiences working and living through this material. So, definitely check that out. But also Arbinger.com has a ton of resources, videos, webinars, kind of like one sheets, that kind of thing, all of that there to be consumed. So if you're curious about this, if this makes sense, if you think that it's a bunch of malarkey, like come check it out and engage with us. We're on LinkedIn, we're pretty active there. And we love to talk to people about this. We love to wrestle with these concepts. This is in no way something like we tell all of our people that come through our courses, like, I'm not here to convince you of anything. That's not the objective. All I'm asking for is an open mind. So just come check it out with an open mind and then come talk to us about it.
Yeah, I'm doubling down. Like this was, like I said, I destroyed the book in 3 days. And I think, a lot of stuff that we talk about, especially in the leadership realm, like, yeah, some of it applies to family, your personal life. But this book actually, like, it transcends the workplace, which I
It
think
really does. I would say I applied it at home first before I applied it in the workplace.
yeah,
You wouldn't know it by that story, but I did.
you've
I did.
grown. You've grown
I
since.
have grown. Yeah. No, listen, the process of becoming outward is really just that, right? It's a process. You will never be 100% outward. Like I don't think it's possible unless you're of the rare few, right? But it's about a process, right? The quicker that you can recognize that you're inward and the faster you can turn outward, the better it's going to be for you and for everybody that you impact in your life, home or work.
It's a great way to end the episode. So that's a good walk off home run, Victoria.
I try.
I appreciate your time today. This was a fun interview, and I love
Yeah.
like I'm sold on this concept now. Like
Oof, so good.
since reading the book, like everything now I look at it from inward versus outward mindset. And then for me, one of the byproducts of doing this is like my feelings don't get hurt. Like I don't take things personally. I do
Yeah.
sometimes, but I'm doing it a lot less now because I'm taking a step back, examining my emotions, looking at what perceptions are driving those, and then looking at facts and being able to, separate, this other person from myself. And anyways, so it's helped me out a lot. So I thank you and the folks at Arbinger for your work on the fourth edition.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is great.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, Victoria. And I'm looking forward to
you.
sharing this episode with all the people who need it, because you and I don't.
Obviously, never. Yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of From the Green Notebook podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us gain visibility and the opportunity to help more people on their leadership journey. Also, make sure you check out our website at www.fromthegreennotebook.com. There, you can listen to past episodes, read leadership articles written by military leaders from around the world. You can sign up for our monthly reading list email where you can learn about new books that are coming out, and our Sunday reflection email that comes out every Sunday morning. Is really short. It's a 2-minute read, but I guarantee you it's going to start your week off on the right foot. Finally, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FTGN Notebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for From the Green Notebook. Again, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. I am humbled by the opportunity to learn these lessons alongside you. So please join us next week for another episode of From the Green Notebook, where we're going to help you lead with the best version of yourself.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my